I think that our education system has not created a society where people feel compelled to proactively act. The skills that were very important for that is to be obedient and compliant. You're teaching obedience and compliance. You're not teaching critical thinking. You're not teaching leadership. You're not teaching creativity.
You know, one of the things that when I post this on other social media, somebody actually, I think on TikTok said, why are you posting this AI stuff? It's going to destroy humanity and all this stuff. I said,
my own students were using ChatGPT on assignments and writing papers and outsourcing the critical thinking. And I was like, guys, no.
Because there's people in Africa that are the humans in the loop who have been filtering some of this content, and they're developing psychological issues and other types of issues by watching all this content. And is AI going to get the best of us or the worst of us at the end of the day?
And that's not necessarily a criticism of the innovation, because this technology has infinite amount of possibility to make a positive impact. However, it also has a shadow side too. Everything has a shadow. Mark Zuckerberg didn't think, oh, I'm going to create a youth mental health crisis across the world by creating Facebook. No, his vision was
I had to unlearn to become a better entrepreneur.
But ultimately, things are looking good in the grander picture of things. And I think sometimes we don't step back and see what good all of this is creating as well.
We try not to hype anything. We try to make sure what's real, what's practical, right? But then also we have to stand up and start building this place. Like you said, somebody else was going to do it.
If you are listening to this kind of content, if you are attracted to this type of conversation, then you're kind of at the right place at the right time. You're not behind. So
welcome back, everybody, to the AI Space Podcast. I have Catherine McMillan from the AI Collective. Catherine, welcome, and tell us what we're going to cover on this episode.
Yeah, so in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about the AI Collective and my journey to getting involved. We're also going to talk about the broader trends that we're seeing in the space, and then the implications of AI on society and in our own lives. So should be a great episode, and hope that you tune in.
AI isn't just the future. It's a force rewriting the rules of business, wealth creation, and society. If you're a founder, innovator, or technologist, this is the AI show for you. The question you have to ask yourself, will I blaze a path, follow the crowd, or be left in the dust? I have another amazing episode for you. I'm thrilled to have Catherine McMillan, founding director of the AI Collective. The AI Collective is a global nonprofit community with over 70,000 founders, researchers, operators, and investors exploring the frontier of AI across major tech hubs worldwide. Through events, workshops, and community-led research, the organization empowers the AI ecosystem to collaboratively shape the future of AI, grounded in trust, openness, and human flourishing. Catherine is a founding director of the AI Collective, a global nonprofit movement advancing trust, openness, and human flourishing. With a background in storytelling, community building, and innovation strategy, she's grown the collective into a 70,000 plus member ecosystem across 40 cities and expanding. Catherine previously worked as a consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton and was a Fulbright scholar in South Korea. She now leads national initiatives like the AI Collective Institute, convening technologists, policymakers, and creatives to shape the future of AI. Her work centers on giving people a voice in where this technology goes next. I'm Sanjay Kalluvilayil, founder and CEO of Stonehaas Advisors, your trusted advisor for AI founders and businesses focused on go-to-market strategy and execution to grow and scale to new levels. Well, Catherine, first of all, welcome. I'm excited to have you here. I know you have a super busy schedule. Well, here on this AI Space podcast, we highlight game-changing insights that help drive innovation and scale business initiatives. We kind of just jump in right away. So what do you see as the hottest trends in AI?
Sure. I mean, I think goes without saying that we've gone from just using the chatbot interface to figuring out ways to automate parts of our work streams and workflows using AI agents, orchestration, and MCP. So I'm seeing a rise of basically holding houses that take all of the leading models and basically allow you to choose which ones that you're going to use. I'm also seeing tons of activity in the IDE and vibe coding space as well. And actually at the AI Collective, we've been very fortunate to work with some of those organizations as partners.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into MCP and vibe coding later in the show. So what do you see as the top strategies leveraging AI to grow and scale an initiative, a community, or a business, right?
I think taking a step back and defining what the outcomes that you want are and working backwards to figure out what parts of this can and should be automated and what parts of it should there be a human decision maker in the loop. So I think sometimes even me, I jump to outcome. I just want to send a prompt and get everything that I want immediately. But if you take a couple more seconds to think critically and consider, okay, how do I use chain of thought reasoning to get to the point where I don't have to do this back and forth to get the output that I want? Building system prompts, having a library to draw off of so that you can do things more seamlessly. So I think systems level thinking using AI tools rather than you just having it be something that you just bark orders at.
No, I think that's great. And what you said is a consistent theme from, I think, folks from various levels, whether the CTO, CEO, founder, community builder. A lot of folks, especially in AI, focus on the technology, but really, and I say this too to my clients, is what is the problem you're trying to solve, right? And then working your way through what that outcome should look like. And sometimes we can use AI, not only, you may think you know what the outcome looks like, but maybe brainstorm, is there a better outcome? Or is there an alternative outcome I should be thinking about? So, I think those are great. So we can take a step back. We've kind of jumped in, but welcome again. Could you tell us a little bit more about Catherine McMillan, your background, how you got here, what led you into your foray into AI?
Sure. So I consider myself to be about 3 years into this space. I saw my foray into AI starting really at the launch of ChatGPT, which was one of the first consumer products that exploded onto the scene in November of 2022. Before that, actually, like AI policy was on my mind. I did a policy research internship and I got to attend briefings, and it was something that I heard a lot about, especially on the future of work question, but it didn't really reactivate in my mind about the significance of AI automation until I was in New York, working on a business trip for my company at the time. And the reason why we were there in the first place is because we were socializing a new practice area at the firm on innovation. So naturally, like innovation, technology go hand in hand. And it was on that day that ChatGPT was released, and we were already having these conversations with managing directors and partners at the consulting firm that I was working at then. And so it was like the perfect storm for me to really think about the technology, not just in that moment, but in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. If that technology is the worst that it could have possibly been at that point, imagine what the growth trajectory would be after everyone is swarming into the space and we're having a new AI renaissance. And that's exactly what happened. First came OpenAI, then Anthropic, then we had Google, first with Bard, now with Gemini. Now we have GPT wrappers that are building new interfaces to engage with the underlying models. So that explosion is something that I noticed or at least predicted immediately when the tool was released. And it's something that I couldn't sit quietly about. It's something that I really had a strong hunger to learn more about, even though I had no technical background. I was a history major in undergrad. I studied education, but I think because of my history major, I'm kind of able to see what systems level change and impact could look like with some of these transformative technologies. Look at the Industrial Revolution. A lot of people say that we're in the fourth industrial revolution right now as we transform what knowledge work is. So, as a consultant back then, of course, I was concerned about this AI tool taking my job, but taking a step back, I realized that it was important not to give into the fear. So, instead, I leaned into the discomfort and decided to take AI governance courses, AI safety courses, to learn at the extreme, like where can this technology go when we have a loss of control, when we take the human out of the loop, when there's different geopolitical and economic forces that are changing the landscape and are impacting all of us in different ways. So I started to engage in those conversations and communities in 2023. And in 2024, I basically decided that I wanted to start being one of the people convening the rooms where I'm attracting the smartest people who know more than me into the same room to talk about the things that I wanted to talk about. So that got me started with the AI Collective in Washington, D.C. And since then, we've hosted, I think, over 20 events across different pillars: technology, business, policy. So creating community around the conversations that are happening right now because people are feeling so many different feelings around how AI is going to impact them.
I'm not an AI avatar, but if I were, I'd want to be powered by Atlas Cloud. AI breakthroughs often stall when companies face complexities, like long training times, slow inference, and deployments that don't scale. Atlas Cloud changes that. We combine deep expertise and advanced tools for large model training and fine tuning so innovators can bring their boldest ideas to life faster. Because building AI takes more than just hardware, it takes expertise, and that's where Atlas Cloud delivers. Learn more at atlascloud.ai.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then you went off to Booz Hamilton. You're doing consulting. So when you start off in consulting, what vertical or space or area were you kind of focused on?
So I actually had two different consulting stints. One of them was very high level strategic advisory and creative sort of work, which I was at BCG Bright House for about 8 months. And then with Booz Allen, of course, like government contracting. So in Booz Allen, I was on the cyber side. So there was often a AI or ML component to a lot of the projects that I had visibility on, and I was more on the procurement and the proposal side of things.
No, that's great. When I started my career, I started off at Ernst & Young Management Consulting after my MBA, and I was doing business process transformation on technology implementations, taking them down from 6 months to 90 days to 30 days. So streamlining processes, looking at software config, understanding end user training. Then I went to Ericsson doing strategy consulting, helping when they were launching 2G, 3G, 4G networks. You're launching this technology at that time, but people didn't understand it, right? And how to use it, and how do you grow the market? How do you make things more successful? So in terms of, also, you said you did a Fulbright scholarship and you traveled abroad. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I had a bit of a existential crisis when I was a senior in college. I first wanted to do nonprofit and humanitarian work, and I had this revelation in my the summer before senior year, which is I actually really enjoy entrepreneurship and business. I just never given myself the space to think that I could do that work. I was a history major. I'd fallen squarely into the social sciences and humanities, and it just felt like something that wasn't meant for me. I also have previous experience in nonprofit management. During the height of the pandemic, I started a nonprofit organization in my hometown, Charlotte, North Carolina, and I grew that to a team of 15. We worked on different projects in the city. And I think being an operator in a resource constricted environment made me realize like I need a different perspective on how do you run a business? How do you build teams? And how do you make things sustainable over time? So that led me to want to go onto the consulting route. So in this flurry of figuring things out, I also applied for the Fulbright scholarship to go teach English in South Korea, of all places. And I think it was as simple as I wanted to get as far away from home as possible and press the restart button on my life to see how and what could happen if I take myself completely out of my comfort zone and go from 0 to 1. So for me, it was an exercise of how can I adapt to a new environment? How do I figure out what my goals and long-term trajectory is? And it gave me a lot of space to think about those things, which is why I was able to focus that year in 2023 when I was abroad on discovery, self discovery, leaning more into the startup ecosystem and also in the AI space. So again, I was teaching English in South Korea. So my days were teaching high school boys conversational English. But by night, I was taking some of these online courses in AI governance. And I was also networking with people who were building startups, sometimes foreigners who were expats in Korea who are working on either AI applications or consumer products. And then eventually I joined a startup called Daytrip and worked on their go to market in Europe and America. So it was just, I look back at it now, I kind of sometimes feels like a fever dream that all of those things happened in that time frame, but could not have traded that experience for the world, because even though it was really hard, I didn't realize how hard it was until I came back to the United States. Things that we take for granted, like being able to eavesdrop on the people on the in the cafe at the table next to you, I had no context or understanding of what anyone around me was saying. I could pick up maybe 5 or 10% of the vocabulary, but it wasn't until I came back and was able to understand the language that people were speaking on a native level that I realized I was living in hard mode in Korea. And that was a huge unlock for me because I realized if I could survive that and thrive, what happens when I take all the barriers out of my way? And so that kind of led me to go on all of these side quests, which eventually put me in the position that I am right now with the AI
No,
Collective.
that's really cool. A couple of points there. Yeah, I had Fulbright scholarship was developed after World War II from based on a senator from Arkansas, and then it was actually to, I guess, increase education awareness, international awareness, and it's one of the prestigious scholarships out there. And I think I looked it up, and quite a few Nobel Prize winners and heads of state have come out of that. So who knows where you'll you'll be in 20 years from now. So, no pressure there.
I mean, it's also just an important thing for cultural exchange, and that's something that I also wanted to do is make the world feel a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
If you can try to interact in the native tongue, if you eat the food, if you walk on the streets, if you take the bus, just like anyone else there, it just helps the world feel a little bit smaller. That we're all on the same team.
Yeah, and to tie it a little bit to AI too, so I have a fascination with languages, and I actually created and we'll get into this later too, in ChatGPT, a custom GPT wrapper for a language learning partner. So I'll, try to pick up some stuff. I'll look up etymologies of words, and Korean was one of the ones I actually looked at one day because I saw a video, and it was developed by King Sejong in the 1400s. The Korean alphabet was based off or not the alphabet, the script was based off the Chinese script, which is too complicated. So he wanted to create a simple script and language for the common people to learn. And that's when and it's called, we call Korean, but it's Hangul, and so he created the script, and it's a very simple script. You can actually pick it up fairly well. The vowels are simple. The I is, I think, a straight line, then A is a straight line with a bar across, and you just go counterclockwise and you can figure out at least the vowels. And, there's some, it's not too hard to pick up in some sense if you spend some time. I'm not saying the vocabulary, but at least recognizing the script is designed because I did pick up
You could actually learn Hangul in less than an hour. There are YouTube videos on this.
I've done it. I watched it and tried to learn it. I picked up some of the patterns, what's an S and stuff, and then, we, of course, you go to some local places and, I pick up, 감사합니다 and, 안녕하세요 when you go to certain restaurants
There
or
we go.
places,
You're ready to go to Korea.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing too. I was watching a show. It's called Arthdal Chronicles on Netflix a couple years ago. I think it moved to Disney or something like that. But they were speaking Korean, and I started recognizing some of the words, and I said, some of these words sound like Indian language words. Because my family's from the southern part of India, and where it speaks like I grew up here, but there's a language called Malayalam, which is related to another language called Tamil. And some of the words like abuji, which is like father, I was like, this sounds so familiar. I did a genetic test and showed my ancestors. They actually came out of Africa to Iran to India, went through China or Thailand, China, up that side, went up the steppes of Asia, came back down to Iran, came back to North India, and came back to South India. But so there may be some of my ancestors probably migrated that path, and you don't ever know from migration history and evolutionary history. Now we think Korean people are a certain way, but there's multiple layers. Even in Japan and other places, there's multiple layers of groups that have traveled and migrated through those spaces. So I'm hoping AI can help us unlock some of these things.
That's honestly fascinating.
Yeah. So let's we've talked about that, and now tell us about the AI Collective. When I first heard about it, it was a Gen AI Collective, and actually, I think it was a couple of months ago. I was actually going down to an event in Austin with Monica Coney from Chief Executive Connections, who also helped me connect with AJ Green, who was actually on the first episode, and now he's like the growth leader for your group, right? And I was going down to the Austin event, and Akshay Mittal from the Austin group asked me to be a speaker there, and so I actually a speaker. Then he connected me to Alex Barnes, and connect with AI Collective, and then I connected with you. So it's kind of interesting as we get into community how it unlocks so many opportunities. But tell us a little bit more about AI Collective, its mandate, what you've been doing in the past year, and this rebranding effort, etc.
Yeah, so our tagline is we're the human side of AI. We provide the space and community for people to have these big conversations around not only how to use AI, but how to think about how the technology is impacting society and how we live and work. So we have a wide remit. We are a platform for exchanging insights between thought leaders. We are a community where people can deepen their human connections with each other in real life and also online. And then ultimately, all of this bubbles up to helping lift all boats and creating collective progress using the best tools and technology on Earth, and essentially giving people the roadmap or the instruction and guidance to be able to leverage these technologies in their own life. AI for good, but also AI literacy and AI education. So we are sprawling in our reach as well. Last time I checked, within the past week, we've incubated 14 new cities.
Yeah,
Of
it seems like every day there's a new city in some other
I
country, you
seriously
know?
cannot keep up anymore, and I'm not even going to try to keep up because every time that I go into our internal platform, which is where we kind of do all of our administrative and hosting management work, I look at the map because it's a dynamic map that takes all of the new chapter applications, all of the ones that have been processed and approved. And I feel like every time I go in there, I just see more dots pop up on the map, which is a great thing. Like these are all great opportunities. One might also say like good problems, because as we're hitting this hockey stick of growth for the organization, it makes it a little bit harder to manage things at scale, because instead of having one-to-one conversations, it's really important to have one-to-many conversations where you are saying something that is communicated and understood and implemented by a team of over 150 volunteers. And everyone has their own sense of how to do things. Everyone's going to put their own spin of it. And also, each ecosystem, each chapter has its own personality, its own culture and team. And how do we respect and honor to be the steady pulse of what's keeping everyone on the same page? So for me, I was on another level last night, and I basically redid our entire internal documentation to make it as easy as possible for a new team member to come in our system and get onboarded. So these are the types of things that I'm thinking about in my position right now. Like when we were the Gen AI Collective, we were 15 chapters, 20 chapters. Now we've surpassed 50 in the past 2 months alone. So
you're hitting that inflection point, basically.
we're hitting the inflection point, but I think it's also a testament to what Alex Barnes, I really love this, I'm going to continue to use this, is doer-ship. If you get people who do things and you get them to do them on a consistent basis over time, then anything is possible, and that's how you create a movement. We can't have a movement if everyone wants to be a leader and everyone wants to have the fancy titles and everyone wants for things to be ready and perfect for it to go. No, we have to iterate, we have to experiment, we have to try new things. We're going to have people on our team that have never hosted an event before, and we need to welcome that. Act fast and also learn fast. So that's kind of our internal culture and DNA, is entrepreneurs, right? We started off in Silicon Valley, in the heart of the US innovation ecosystem, and I feel that the entrepreneurial mindset has seeped into all parts of our culture and the type of people that we attract to join the team, which is great. It's great to be surrounded by highly agentic people. Sometimes though, that means that in the future, when we're growing even more, it's important to build systems and operations around it so that, it may make sense to you because you went 0 to 1 yourself in your own city, but how do we make it even easier for people to onboard in the future and make it as frictionless of an experience as possible so that they can do the work that matters, which is connecting people, connecting the dots on AI topics, and helping for people to reach new breakthroughs in their own professions and personal lives. So laser focus on impact is what my focus is these days, and how we can create just a shared understanding across our community.
And I think that's great. Reminds me of a recent episode with Richie Cotton from Data Camp. He said, I asked him what one of the factors of success, and he goes, people with a sense of ownership, right? If I tie what you're saying, if somebody has a sense of ownership and they're a doer, right? And they're trying to get things done. Not, and you have an environment where people are allowed to fail, they're allowed to experiment, and allowed to make things better. And I like what you said at the end is, it's great that you figured out yourself, but then how do you give back and make that process frictionless for others. So that way they can go to 0 to 60 in a much faster pace than you, in a much safer way. I think, those are amazing insights there.
Yeah, simplify, simplify, simplify everything. It needs to be skimmable, readable. People need to get the gist of it super fast. My attention is non-existent. I am moving so fast all the time. It's hard for me to focus. Basically, I made it so that information architecture in our Google Drive, start here. This is what this is, and having the parentheses like for when you need motivation, or our Bible for hosting events. Make it fun. Make people want to click on things that would otherwise be boring. You think people will click on an event hosting guide and see all of these? How do you make it fun? How do you make people want to seek that internal knowledge? And so that's what I'm trying to think through I think the training and onboarding process is making it feel fulfilling for people. Yeah, I'm really, really proud of that. That's a 3 a.m. project that I did last night. I don't know what happened. It's like, I definitely have that undiagnosed ADHD. It does run in my family, but sometimes you can get a week's work of stuff done in just a night. And I feel like that was yesterday for me.
Yeah, no, I have those moments where like things aren't going. You feel like you're doing nothing because sometimes your mind is stuck, and then in an hour you can do like an eight. If you're very focused, you can do 8 hours of work. And I like what you said about making it fun, because that's one of the intents of the show. Obviously, besides having amazing guests and amazing insights, we just want to have a fun conversation, right? And so before we continue, I want to invite everyone to follow Catherine McMillan, the AI Collective, and definitely like, comment, subscribe to the AI Space podcast, because that helps us to grow the show and have a more impressive guests like Catherine. And if you're part of the AI Collective, welcome, and hopefully you become a listener and subscriber to the show. So let's get to the next phase. We want to get this. I know you have a lot of amazing insights. So around vision and mindset, you've done a lot of different things, and you've helped build it from a DC chapter to now you're the founding director, right? What are some insights around vision and mindset that you have for the folks out there that are whether they're trying to build a business, community, there may be an existential crisis in terms of, hey, where do I go next? What are some insights you have?
I think the first thing is everyone, regardless of tenure, regardless of how technical they are, everyone has something to learn. So there's a humility aspect of the AI space. It moves so fast, it moves at breakneck speed, that if you just scan the news at any given day, it feels impossible to keep up. So knowing that there's always something to learn, but at the same time, if you are taking positive steps in the direction of pursuing knowledge and getting hands on keyboard and playing around with these tools, then that's better than just ignoring it or pretending like it's not there, because it is there and it will continue to grow whether you ignore it or not. And so it's best to have, an open mind and open also your eyes to the positive ways that you can not just use this in your work, but in your personal life. So the first thing I recommend is the humility / everyone has something to learn. The next thing is that you need to find what only you can do. What is your unique differentiator as a person? How are you going to stand out in a post-AI world, a post-work world? What makes you you? What are the collection of experiences that give you a set of skills and competencies that nothing can replace? So I think something that proliferation of technology has shown is that it rewards people who want to solve problems, because it takes a lot of the barriers and a lot of the grunt work out of going from 0 to 1. A great example of this in DC, for example, is I'm pretty plugged into the startup and founder ecosystem here. And from my conversations with first-time founders who have been in PM roles or who have never been or are non-technical founders, have felt empowered to start their own company because of the vibe coding platforms, the IDEs, the co-pilots. It makes it so much easier for a solo entrepreneur to build the prototype and to take it from just an idea in their head to something that they can actually see, feel, touch, use. So I think that AI and all of the tools that are being created are rewarding entrepreneurship. So if you see a problem area, a problem set, see if you can just build a solution using the tools available. And if you think of it in that way, there's infinite possibilities. So I think that's what I would sort of recommend for people, is to experiment and to not feel like they're left behind, to see it as an opportunity for them to learn and to take ownership of their own career and growth.
I think that's great advice. You had existential crisis a few years ago. I was
Yeah.
turning 50 2 years ago, and I was like, I'm tired of this corporate cycle of boom and bust, and I don't want to go and get into these cycle of corporate layoffs. So I actually dove into AI, get an AI certification at the age of 50, right? And then for the past 2 years, then last year I launched my consulting practice. And you said what you're good at, and I figured I'm good at go-to-market strategy execution, business transformation, really how to make things more efficient and more innovative, right? Now I've niched down to work with AI founders to help them grow and scale, right? And figuring that I'm working with different tools and those types of things. And so, whether you're young or, a little bit older, I think now is the perfect time, because we've talked about the other episodes. Somebody may have 10, 20 years of AI experience, but even if you just have 2, 3 years experience, it's kind of a level playing field. And even if somebody wants to start now, things are changing so fast that you're not that far behind. If you just jump in at the right time, it's like catching that surf wave. I think this is the right timing to jump in for anybody that's been on the sidelines or sitting on the beach waiting for that wave. Just get into the water, right?
100%. I think that our education system has not created a society where people feel compelled to proactively act. Because if you think about post-industrial America, where they were on the assembly line, it was an 8-hour workday. They were given very routine tasks to do on the assembly line. And basically, the skills that were very important for that is to be obedient and compliant. And that's what they teach in the schools. They want you to sit in your chair. They want you to open your book. They want you to be quiet. And so they're teaching students how to be
Don't challenge the teacher or the questions, right?
don't challenge a short authority. You're teaching obedience and compliance. You're not teaching critical thinking. You're not teaching leadership. You're not teaching creativity. So, I mean, this is where the education minor comes into play about pedagogy and, just how our education system needs to catch up to where we are technologically right now. Because from my experience teaching English in South Korea, when it was just maybe a year in maturity, all the tools and chatbots that were coming out, my own students were using ChatGPT on assignments and writing papers and outsourcing the critical thinking. And I was like, guys, no, use your own brain first, jot down some ideas, and then you can use ChatGPT to help with the flow of the content and the ideas. But they should come from your brain first, and then you can refine them and iterate using these tools as an assistant. So I think for me, it's easy to see how we got to where we are today because the outcomes that we have right now were perfectly designed for how the education system has been for the past 60, 70 plus years. This is exactly what the outcomes should be based off of how we're setting it up. So I don't have all the solutions here. Granted, I'm no longer an educator in that capacity, and there's a lot of larger socioeconomic and political questions around the state of education. So it's hard for me to say what schools can and should do, but it's something that I, for one, would love to talk to more teachers and administrators about to see how can we leverage AI for good in the classroom, and then how can we also change our paradigm for how we even think about schooling and teaching kids.
No, you're absolutely right, because when I turned 40, I had to go through this, and I was like, okay, I read a book like Rich Dad Poor Dad, and thinking about wealth creation, and thinking about books like The Richest Man in Babylon, and all these different things. And I had to change my mindset, and to be an entrepreneur, I worked for Fortune 500, Global 500, very structured environments, right? And there's a process of unlearning that I've had to go over since then. I've actually had to unlearn to become a better entrepreneur. And then when I launched my business, it's like, and we'll get into this now, sales and marketing. The leads and people like discount sales and marketing, but when you're an entrepreneur, lead gen and sales and marketing is the most important thing. It's the lifeline, because if you don't have sales and marketing and leads coming in, the technology's not going to do any good. You're not going to be able to pay your teams. You're not going to be able to pay back your investors, right? So let's get into a little bit about, we've talked about vision and mindset, but how do you start getting your first, whether it's a community or a business, getting your first community members, your clients? How do you start for somebody starting out? What are your insights around getting that initial start, right, of folks getting the word out?
So I think there's three things. The first one is a vision, a clear and compelling vision around your product or your community. Why should people care? You need to have a strong vision. The next thing is elbow grease. You need to be able to make that initial investment upfront, knowing that there aren't going to be huge returns at the beginning. So you're going to be doing a lot of cold outreach. You're going to be doing a lot of one-to-one conversations and personal relationship building, sending the invites one at a time, or doing the outbound emails for new customer discovery. And then the third one is continuity or reliability. So you are either providing a product or service that's reliable and sustainable, you have a great relationship and it continues over time. And from the community perspective, you're dependable, that you host an event once a month or twice a month, and that you're the face of it, you're a friendly face, you build a strong culture around it. So strong vision, elbow grease, and the continuity. It needs to be something that's sustainable over time. If you can't commit to something, you'll have false starts and stops. That's not going to work, and especially not going to work for a community, because a community isn't people who come to an event. A community is people who keep coming back to any sort of space or forum to interact with people in different ways. So you can't have a community without the continuity. And having built 3 or 4 communities off the ground in DC alone in the past year, you're going to have to put yourself out there and be absolutely shameless. You're going to have to send cold outreach to random people that you don't know and try to convince them to come. That's what I literally did at the beginning. Is I went onto LinkedIn. I found people who I considered my ICP, ideal community persona, and I just sent them a message saying, hey, I think you'd really enjoy this, would love to have you there. These are the type of people that are going to be there. And I did that 15, 20, 30 times, to the point where I started building a roster of people who knew me, who knew what I was trying to build, and kept coming back. So that's really how you do it. People don't do that. And the same thing goes for building a personal brand or a social media account. That is literally all it is.
It's
Vision,
consistency. It's consistency, showing up each day, and people know that you're going to be consistent, right?
That's the hardest part, though, is that it's hard for people to wake up every day and decide to go to the gym, because it's a hard thing. It's not, from the outside, it's not super pleasurable, but once you build those habits and systems into place, then it becomes something that you can't live without.
And I think this is the next thing, because I love what you said about elbow grease, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, community builder, any sort of leader, you have to get down, get dirty, get things going, right? And you have to. And there's something else. I saw this chart. You think when you think everything, the growth is going to be linear, right? But it starts off great, and then there's like this, and they call it the valley of disappointment, and that's the hardest part, because, like you said, there's going to be days where you're going to be, is this worth it? You may be depressed, and you're not getting the results. But the only thing you got to do is focus on the right actions to get the right results, because people don't realize, to get that inflection point, you have to go through that valley of disappointment. You may need a community around you. You may need your family. You may need more money, right? And that's hard. And that's where most people break or fail, is in that valley of disappointment. It's only the ones that can make it past that and get to, I guess, where you are now, in a sense of, at least, terms of growing, in terms of that. That's the hard part, right?
Absolutely. I have peaks and valleys every single day.
Every hour.
It seriously is such an emotional roller coaster, and in order to survive it, you just have to develop emotional resilience. You have to be able to say, hey, not everything's going to be perfect. I can only make this many things my problem right now. I can only put out so many fires at once. So, this week alone, it's what day it's Thursday, right? I feel like every week I live a new lifetime, because the change velocity is so high, and also the type that I'm doing every day is so variable, that every day is so different. So when you ask me what I did last week, my response is typically, I have no idea, because I'm having so many new experiences, meeting so many new people. It's impossible for me to contain all of that. So I just take every day as it is. I get as much as I can get done. And if I ever need a single source of truth for what has happened, well, I have email and I have my calendar.
Yeah, and obviously, when you want to build something, we got to get past the point of elbow grease, and you talk about systems, right? And that leads us into scaling, right? So let's talk about a little bit of technology, since this is we're getting to, AI and stuff. So let's talk about different categories, right? AI is such a broad category now. When back then it was just machine learning, where you had computers analyzing patterns of data to predict the outcome, or like churn in a bank or whatever, right? Generative AI came out, where you have these large language models like ChatGPT that are analyzing data, and they're producing new content, right? And they're predicting in terms of probability the next sequence of words. But in terms of LLMs, what are the ones that you're using in terms of to help systemize your process? Because there's only so much elbow grease before you get too dirty where you can't do anything and you start slipping and sliding, right, in terms of a community or a business. So what are the things that help you to kind of navigate the day?
I mean, I don't even really write anything myself anymore. It always gets filtered through some sort of LLM because it's just faster that way. I need to outsource my brain, unfortunately, to a decent extent. In terms of what I use, I'm a little bit vendor locked in on ChatGPT. I do use Claude for more bespoke things, maybe more personal reflections or things that require more taste. Gemini is actually quite powerful and is really good at talking through the chain of thought reasoning and the thought process behind things. So that makes it better for building prompts. And I've been pleasantly surprised by Gemini recently. And then, of course, Perplexity is fantastic for deep research. It's so much faster than OpenAI's. And it really just depends on the magnitude of the project that you're working on. If you're looking for like a 15-20 page report, maybe deep research for OpenAI is better, but Perplexity does a phenomenal job as well of collecting, aggregating the sources, attributing the sources, and love Perplexity. The last one that I've been trialing out a lot recently, especially because they've been a partner with us in the past, is Manus AI, which is a general purpose agent. It's not a vibe coding platform, it's not an IDE, it's more so a knowledge worker co-pilot for things like building out web pages or slides or creating roadmaps, strategy docs, whatever you need it to do. It has most of the core functionalities as any other LLM, but I was actually quite blown away. I had it do a couple of decks without much context, and it was fantastic. I also had it create a landing page for a toy that my friends and I are building, like an ed tech thing, and it just like that, at a snap of the fingers. So I'm increasingly impressed by Manus. There's others like GenSpark. Also, OpenAI recently got its own general purpose agent too. So I'm excited to test all of these things out. And I think that these will be very useful, but also very disruptive in the consulting space and the strategy space. But I think the implementation and application layer is still important because of the governance side. So I think that enterprise and large companies are still a little bit hesitant to figure out how they're going to use these tools because they're not sure about the data leakage or the right AI and data governance that is applied to these tools. So that might take some more process, but for very lean teams that don't care, for example, the AI Collective, we'll use anything. Absolutely. If it makes our lives easier.
Yeah, I think because I've used all of them. I know what I use them for. I think the insight for the folks out there is try them and see what works best. Sometimes ChatGPT works better. I have my own Stonehaas Advisors CMO wrapper, custom GPT in ChatGPT. Claude's good, especially good from the coding perspective. I use Perplexity, when I'm doing some of my research, like on getting your bio or whatever. But one thing I'll give advice to everybody, when it comes to general stuff, I think these LLMs are good. But especially when it comes to stats, data, always check if it's actually correct. Because there's some stuff that's produced, like I've asked about, like, say, consulting rates or whatever. But then always challenge to make sure it's actual numbers, because then sometimes, or I'll have even a question about some sort of book or the Bible, and they'll give me something that's like, is that actually right? It's like, sorry, I made that up, So you always double check, whatever's produced too, the folks out there.
I've done so much rage typing to ChatGPT because I know it's bullshitting.
Oh yeah.
It kind of veers towards toxicity. I have to maybe apologize to ChatGPT sometimes, but it's just so frustrating because it's been incredibly syncophatic in the past month. I think maybe it's because they're doing another model update. I think that's going to happen this week or maybe in the next couple weeks where we're going to get GPT-5. But even Claude, I would say, is relatively syncophatic too. I mean, it's the same thing as the social media algorithm. They want to please you and they want you to stay engaged with the platform so that you can use more tokens and maybe increase your plan.
Yeah. And so we talked about LLMs. Have you done anything in terms of automations, whether it's like Make or anything in Zapier or have you used any? So we're not getting agents yet, just like basic workflow automations. Have you all been using that in the community?
Oh yeah, we like the global we, yes, especially AJ. Candidly though, I just simply do not have time to even think. We were talking about first principles at the beginning of this conversation where think about the desired outcome, think through all the steps that are needed to get there. I need the outcome right now, oftentimes. So I'm at a place where the only time that I have to think through, okay, like how can I automate some of the things that I'm doing is at like 10 p.m. And at that point, I am totally fried. So looking forward to collaborating with AJ so that he can build some systems for me. But you had a conversation with AJ. I'm sure that he told you about all of the different things. I mean, we have some automation set up.
Yeah, the last time when we had the first episode in December, and I had a quick 15-minute catch up with him last month just to see how things were going, but I haven't heard all the updates. So
Yeah, he's moving faster than the speed of light. Honestly.
yeah, I agree with you on the automations because I've been out to these, and for these workflow automations, going back to my business process, you actually have to understand the process to build it out. If you don't have the domain expertise or the knowledge, how do you go build a workflow automation, right? Unless somebody tells you, and that's where we get into agents. Where now if they already have pre-built templates, some of these sites have pre-built templates. So if you want to do like a lead gen or something else, it'll guide you through that process, right? But now we get into some of these workflow agents, right? They'll go act for you, and that's what we need as entrepreneurs or solopreneurs or builders. We don't have time, to figure all this out. There's fires going on. You got to get deliverables out, and then after dinner or whatever, you got to get stuff done. It's like, yeah, you're burnt out, and you need that co-pilot to help you figure out how to solve this, right?
And also, I think that interestingly, my work has been extremely people-facing, where averaging 8 calls a day sometimes 3 hours in a row. If my day is spent mostly talking to people, the idea behind that is force multiplying myself through getting other people involved in the organization and making sure that they have an understanding of what they want to do, what needs to be done, and how those two things interact. But one of my goals for the fall is after we get things right at home, right? Having the right onboarding process for new team members and chapters. We have a system for all of our major pillars like partnerships. Once everything is right there, which does require a human thinking through and building those systems, then I can think, how can we increase efficiency? And that's where I'd love to explore automations.
Yeah, and then also in terms of scheduling too, I use Calendly, and I only allow meetings from Tuesday to Thursday, so I don't allow meetings on my Mondays and Fridays, so I can focus on trying to get stuff. But now if some emerging comes, I have a special link for that meeting. So I have different links for different kinds of meeting, like a 15-minute meeting when I'm available. Even on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't take a meeting until either 9 or 10, and I have a certain time, and I don't take certain meetings, so I actually can get some work done, right? And then I have Fathom or Otter. I think mostly Fathom now because it has a video and it takes my meeting minutes and action items, and so I try to automate all that stuff, right? And then I've used, now you talk about vibe coding. So for those that don't know vibe, kind of like in ChatGPT, you're chatting with the agent, and it's a no-code tool. So instead of typing in code, it starts building a landing page for you, an app. And I think I've used Lovable, Bolt, Cursor's a little bit more, a bit deeper, but I think they all do some good stuff. But what I've learned through all this stuff, there's no easy button, right? And there's times when, kind of like you said, I was like, at one point, I'm telling it, like, it says, hey, this is not working, and it's got a white screen. Like, I see it, it's working. I'm like, I asked it to test and debug. It's like, oh, you're right, it's a white screen, I don't see anything. And then it goes through the same process. And finally, I would be like, act as an expert coder. I'll be like, you're acting like a junior level intern. Like, you're right, let me go figure this out myself.
Oh my god, I tried using Lovable. I basically wanted to create AI B&B for team members to basically crash on each other's couches, like within the trusted network that we have as like a team perk. So I was trying to build a landing page for that and all the interfaces, and built like a beautiful landing page that was basically a replication of Airbnb, but the problem was just wasn't dynamic. You couldn't really interact with it, and I just did not have the bandwidth or the brain power to try to debug everything. So I just recorded a short loom, and then I put it out into the ether of saying, hey, can someone else build this? Someone else being like one of our engineers.
Yeah, and what all these tools, they do have a section where if somebody knows code, they can go in and fix a code, etc., right? But yeah, it's a interesting process, and I think the biggest challenge is they can get all this beautiful stuff. The biggest challenge around authentication, security, and an actual deployment. And I think you need to, at this point, I think most of these tools, you still have to be a little bit more savvy to get some of the stuff working. And then we talked about agents, and, a lot of these times we have to go, and I think you talked about MCP earlier. So instead of having to go out and put in every single API for every single, custom application out there, you have MCP, which will allow you to, more like a plug and play, kind of intended to be like the USB-C for agents, right?
I mean, I'm trying to think creatively on how to think about my role in as though we were a startup and not necessarily a social movement or a nonprofit, because the more that we think like a savvy startup, maybe we can build tools, maybe there's all sorts of automations and workflows and MCP channels to set up. But because there's still such a strong human element to things right now, it's a human that needs to host these events. AI can't host these events, at least in person. AI can set up the Illuma page now. AI can send out the invites. We have all of that infrastructure embedded into our platform. But at the end of the day, it's a human that has to host the event. So it is a very people forward organization still. But AJ, myself, Chappie, we are continuously trying to think through ways, once we have a little bit more capacity on our team, to think through bigger unlocks to 100x, 1000x our community. What are those things? What's the 1% of efforts that lead to the 99% of outcomes that we want?
And for those that aren't aware, MCP's model context protocol is actually developed by Anthropic, who's responsible for Claude LLM models. So definitely do some research around that. We're talking about agents, and then also multimodal agents. I think in the last episode, one of the last episodes with Babak Hojat, of CTO of AI Economics, and we talked about multimodal agents. And then I want to get to is that, I'm sure as a community builder, leader, and me as an entrepreneur, helping you make decisions, right? And it can be, at one point, AI, instead of having to go hire a lot of people, you can have it as almost like a founding team to help you figure out marketing and sales and other aspects, right?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to already find low level ways to execute on these things. I think, though, that there's still a lot of platforms and different parts of the tech stack for just getting the work done, that it requires people, hands on keyboard, brains, people talking to each other. But you're absolutely right that we can use AI as like a team member on our founding team as well. So a couple of things that I'd love to automate is, I would love to get reports to understand chapter health and be able to nurture ones that maybe need some support if they haven't held an event in a while. What are the key outcomes from the events? I would love to standardize an event impact score so that we can actually quantify how impactful and useful these events were on our community, but then also to other objectives and goals we have as an organization. So how can we get very quantify things that are seemingly unquantifiable? And that's going to take a product mindset to think through, how do we collect more data from people in real time after the fact in a way that is non-intrusive, frictionless, and ideally fun as well. No one likes surveys, I've learned that. But how do we get people to still tell us what they're thinking and allow us to capture some of the impacts that we might not even be aware of because it's so abstracted?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And then in terms of, I know you already focus on democratization, right? Making AI more accessible to people from a variety of backgrounds, industries, experiences, right? But what do you see? And there's still some key challenges. How can we bridge this gap to making it a little bit more accessible and understandable for folks?
I think it's almost like a personal willingness thing. Of course, there's infinite amount of tools and programs on the internet. I think it's just a willingness to get yourself outside your comfort zone. Something that also could be helpful as a way to assist with helping people on the journey to learning new content is that you're not doing it alone. You're doing it in a community, you have a cohort. So, I mean, that's something we're trying to pilot at the AI Collective, is building a weekly webinar series where we have subject matter experts and thought leaders come in and teach a skill once a week. So we're hoping that that can provide an initial testing ground for people to learn something in a low stakes environment alongside other people, and then use that as a launch pad to explore other questions, dive deeper. On the side of the education system, it rewards credentializing, it rewards tangible metrics of success rather than practical or applicable metrics. So people get a bunch of certifications and take all of these online courses, but they don't really have a portfolio. So encouraging people to get hands-on core and actually use the tools in addition to these micro-credential programs, I think is also important.
Yeah, and I think it's important, credentials and actually doing real projects. And I'm not trying to sound any alarm bells, but before on a previous episode, we talked about how entry level positions are going away, especially for new hires, and it's getting hard for them to get jobs. But now, this past week, some of the largest Indian companies like TCS talked to the consultancy service, laying off thousands of folks, and it's actually at this senior level position. And they're saying, well, they've tried to upskill some of these folks, and going back to willingness, or I'm not sure, but they felt like these people couldn't adjust. And so there's going to be, and I just looking at a stat now, there could be, even in India, which is, you think IT outsourcing and cost arbitrage with AI coming, that's another cost arbitrage versus the outsourcing model, right? So there's going to be massive layoffs at multiple levels. So I think it's important for people, if you aren't aware and you're watching this, to that it's not, I'm not intending to raise an alarm bell or say there's a massive tsunami coming, but I think we have to be aware and be prepared for what's coming next, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better. I myself tried to veer away from fear mongering, but it's just impossible to ignore the overwhelming amount of evidence that's put across the news every single day that confirms this fact that people are being displaced, not necessarily replaced, but displaced. That's a fact. Where do these people go next? There's this promise that there's going to be all of these new verticals and industries that are created from this AI boom. I think those have yet to be actually created. So there's a bit of an uncomfortable point where we're in right now, where there's a transition period of upskilling that's required, adaptability that's required, but also just organizations are restructuring as a whole as they consider what these technologies are capable of, and until they figure it out, like they don't really need as many people as they did before, and they want to have a core team that is AI native, that is leveraging the new tech stack and the systems and tools. So it's something where, again, like I said before, keep your eyes open and be aware of what you're ignoring. If you're choosing to ignore the fact that there's maybe a skill requirement now in the industry, and especially in the knowledge work sector, that's, maybe reflect on why are you afraid to learn? Why are you afraid to try something new? Maybe you like the way that things were. Well, there's forces outside of our control. We can't do anything about that as individuals. But how are you going to choose for yourself your own future and be the maker of your own destiny? If you see yourselves as the victim of what's happening rather than someone who can make the most of the context and situation, that paradigm shift and mindset shift, I think a lot of people would benefit from.
I think that's great. I think the key insight there is, like, take that shift. If you're really good at something and you're passionate about it, and we talked about it earlier, figure out how to implement that with AI to scale yourself and to make yourself better. And that takes us into the next part. I like what you also said about AI native, that's what they're looking for. So how do we balance AI innovation, fast time to market, with ethical and responsible AI governance and development? I know you're working on some policy and stuff like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I have plenty of thoughts on that. I think the high level is basically the people you meet, the everyday people who don't really have lobbying power to Congress, legislative ability like lawmakers, or, money in the bank to get what we want done, requires so many of us to be on the same page and being loud about what we want. No social movement in history has happened because people were quiet. Women's suffrage, civil rights, take your pick. Policy leaders don't just wake up one day and decide, let's be more responsible, let's give more people more rights today. No, it requires people to stand up and advocate. We're the constituents, we're the citizens. We need to stand up and say what we feel about these advancements. And that's not necessarily a criticism of the innovation, because this technology has infinite amount of possibility to make a positive impact. However, it also has a shadow side too. Everything has a shadow. And so if we aren't really thinking about or de-risking what the shadow side is, like for example with social media, Mark Zuckerberg didn't think, oh, I'm going to create a youth mental health crisis across the world by creating Facebook. No, his vision was, I want to make people feel more connected regardless of where on earth they are.
And some
And I
people feel, and some people feel more disconnected.
Right. It's like that's kind of around the design thinking that goes into this. Think of the adjacent possibles, think of alternative realities, the good, the bad, the ugly that are possible of introducing this new technology into the market. And then find ways, second and third order consequences to de-risk and to at least anticipate what else could happen afterwards. Unfortunately, though, with innovation, scrappy startups, they don't have really the mental bandwidth to think about governance or compliance or whatever sort of high caution roles that help to de-risk organizations. They're just trying to get their product to market, get as much money in the bank as possible, as many users and eyeballs and attention as possible on what they're doing. They're not incentivized to think about what can go wrong unless it impacts their bottom line. So the negative social impact could actually positively benefit the bottom line of the company. The predictive algorithm on social media create all sorts. I'm not going to commentate on that.
Yeah.
But
Even big corporations they built in lawsuits. It's cheaper to pay the lawsuit than fix the problem. And so,
exactly.
one of the things that when I post this on other social media clips and stuff, and somebody actually, I think on TikTok said, "Why are you posting this AI stuff? It's going to destroy humanity and all this stuff." Like I said, yeah, we bring up on every episode we bring about the benefits and how we can grow AI, right? But we also talk about the risks, right? The dangers, and if people like us don't stand, like I don't hype anything, like we try not to hype anything. We try to make sure what's real, what's practical, right? But then also we have to stand up and start building this place. Like you said, somebody else was going to do it, right? And look what AI is being trained on. All this social, it's like the worst of humanity: violence, sex, drugs, hate. It's not like the data that's on social media. How much of it is really good, right? And how do we start curating good things so that AI develops and put the guardrails in place so it goes into a good place? Because there's people in Africa that are the humans in the loop that have been filtering some of this content, and they're developing psychological issues and other types of issues by watching all this content. And is AI going to get the best of us or the worst of us at the end of the day?
That's a great question. I wish I had an answer.
Well, that's why we're here. Hopefully, so
I just think that people need to be having more of these conversations and figure out what kind of future do you want to live in? And then what kind of responsibility are you willing to take for your passivity or inaction? Think about, we all have families. We all think about the youth, the next generation. I would love for people to actually think through the type of futures that we are, frankly, like I've inherited as a young person and that other generations will inherit, of all the mess that we're creating right now. I mean, there's obviously a light at the end of the tunnel. I love AI. I use it every single day. I'll be the first to advocate for it, but at the same time, I think we should expect and hope for more in how it performs and how it also people use and understand it, wide scale adoption level.
Yeah, I mean, I have two kids in college. One is applying to med schools, and one is going a business route. And by the time they're out in a couple of years, the landscape's can completely change. So I'm telling them, you got to be prepared now. So I know we're coming up on time. This has been an amazing conversation. So we always end with some encouragement. So any final thoughts, insights, encouragement for those that are seeking again this space or building on this space, kind of grinding it? What are your thoughts on that to them?
I mean, if you are listening to this kind of content or if you are attracted to this type of conversation, then you're kind of at the right place at the right time. You're not behind. So just take a step every day to become more literate, to test and use more tools, and you should be fine. I think there's a lot of doomerism out there. I have my fair share of doomerism, but ultimately things are looking good. And the grander picture of things. I think sometimes we don't step back and see what good all of this is creating as well.
Yep. So, obviously I think we can talk, all day about this kind of stuff. This has been an awesome conversation, and we can talk about community building. Where's the best place for listeners to learn more about you and connect with the AI Collective?
To connect with the AI Collective, go to our website. It is a beacon of information. When people ask, like, tell me more about the AI Collective, I was like, go to our website, read our founding perspective, look at our mission, look at our values, apply to join the team.
Show up at an event, right?
Come to an event, be part of the community. I mean, I'm pretty accessible on LinkedIn too, if you want to reach out to me. I will say though that I would appreciate it if people looked at the website and did a little bit of homework. So not that I like expect people to have a PhD in the AI Collective, but like if you want to know what it's about, take a second to just read from our website and also the content that I posted as well. So yeah, that's all I'd have to say. But I respond pretty much to every single LinkedIn DM that I get, especially those people who have ideas for the AI Collective and how it can improve. So always try to be as accessible as possible to the community.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, I'm trying to automate my guest intake form through Go High Level and automate that process. And I'm sure you're going to have to figure out automating, responding to people, because my LinkedIn messaging it's like I have to get time to respond to folks, right? Well, everyone make sure to check out and connect with Catherine McMillan with AI Collective. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to the YouTube channel right now, and find us on your favorite platforms like Spotify, Apple, etc. Catherine and I had an amazing time this episode. I think we've learned a lot. You had some amazing insights. I'm Sanjay Kalluvilayil, your host, founder and CEO of Stonehaas Advisors. I hope you gained a wealth of insights and to grow, transform, and scale your business to new dimensions and levels, and also maybe your life if you're trying to get into the space. I hope to see you all next time. Thanks so much.